All right, so Bitcoin is pumping, of course, later in the week, and we're going to dive into maybe what is causing the action in the market right now. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to TechPath. You guys know we cover a lot of blockchain data here, and also a lot of analysis around where some of the market is moving. Remember that when we go into something, we look at a complete different type of data sets than what most people look at. A lot of people look at charts, history, things of that. Nothing wrong with charting. I think a lot of the YouTubers out there and analysts that go in that direction are great, but ours is a little bit different. We really track down some of the things that really drive sentiment, and also a thing we call amplification, which is really how sentiment rolls up into a forward-looking indicator. So this is really the big issue here. So a lot of people are asking, all right, well, what's causing Bitcoin to continue seeing these moves? Some of this will be news items. Some of this is really more market sentiment than anything. And a lot of this is movement within big institutions. I want to jump to this first story. And this is just BlackRock, who is betting big on Bitcoin mining as a sector rakes in 44 million in a day. Obviously, Larry Fink, who is the CEO over there, worth over 1.1 billion, has come a long way since 2017 when he called it basically a place for criminals. And they've kind of moved into this position right here where they now, being the largest asset manager with 9 trillion under their belt, is now moving into a position where they've invested into Marathon Digital Holdings. Anytime you invest into a blockchain and or a crypto mining operation like Marathon, the obvious thing is that you're betting on the ecosystem. And the key here is that a lot of these institutions are either moving in this direction in crypto traded assets like that in traditional asset classes, and they're prepping for potentially being able to take out things like ETFs and scenarios of that nature, which is really starting to, I think, heat up the market now that we're past kind of that summer lull. Additionally, if you look at what's happening with the Fed, and I want to jump to a quick article here, the Fed minutes show that the U.S. central bank could start tapering QE, so quantitative easing, in 2021. That's this year. And that is a big deal if this actually happens. So just to kind of jump to the point here, looking ahead, most participants noted that provided the economy were to evolve broadly as they anticipated, they would judge that it could be appropriate to start reducing the pace of asset purchases, these being bonds. And this was right out of the minutes of the Fed meeting. And this really starts to look at two things. One is that if they start to pull back on bond purchasing, we will start to see some shift in the market for potential hedging certain assets. And the perfect hedge market could be cryptocurrency. And again, that gets you into a scenario where we've got a lot of smart players on the sidelines that are saying, we could see some QE easing here toward the end of the year. We need to be right here in the beginning of this bull run second half and being in that play at that time. And that's essentially what seems to be happening with Bitcoin right now, is we are seeing a lot of indicators pushing in again. We've looked at this for quite some time. Institutional capital, of course, moving in. Obviously, now you've got the Fed talking about QE. You've got a lot of movement in the capital space. Stocks, of course, who have had some readjustment in what we could still see another adjustment here in the market later this fall. All of this playing into the hands of crypto. And this is happening both whether you're a Cardano user or a member, or you're looking at something in the ETH category, or you're looking at some of the altcoins like Solana or some of those. We've done a bunch of these analysis videos over the past couple of weeks, really anticipating what we've been seeing, and that is a rising movement quickly on the sentiment front. And I want to jump to our chart to kind of give you an example of what we're looking at. And this was essentially our Bitcoin scorecard that we have been tracking really for quite last couple of weeks here. So August 11th, we scored our first sentiment bubble when we saw a potential here on some rise, and that was at 64.12. Amplification was 67.18. And as you guys know, anytime amplification flips on the high side of sentiment, we anticipate fireworks on something, and that was exactly what happened in our prediction zone, and we were able to pretty much call it all the way through where we are right now. The one caveat to this is what we're seeing action happening right here on Friday afternoon, depending on when you're watching this video. But what you're seeing right here is continued movement in sentiment. Sentiment here dropped slightly. Amplification also dropped slightly. Saw a little bit of sideways action, which is pretty typical of what we see, but it also predicts this kind of thing right here, which is a little bit downward movement. And when you have those kind of things occurring, and then sentiment right here jumps up again, along with amplification jumping up, also flipping. And that's what we're dealing with right here, which is where we start to see this kind of movement here. Now we just got our last sentiment bubble in here at 65.09, so just a little bit off of where we were recording as of, let's see, that is on August 16th. And this now at 67.88, also dropping a little bit from what was 69.07. So what that tells us is that this little action that we're seeing right now in the market could be some moves down into this zone, which is really kind of what we're pointing of having Bitcoin holding at that $50,000, $49,000 resistance, and most likely holding this position for a little bit of time, unless, of course, we see something major that breaks open. So the question is this a good time to maybe take profits? Is this a good time to push out some of your Bitcoin right now? A lot of people look at this, and many conservative holders will say, hey, I'm taking profits on the way up. And this is really kind of my strategy. Again, we do these market movers from time to time. The idea behind these are pretty straightforward. We just pull together a data set. We try to put together some pieces of research and or journalism that is coming at us, that's kind of giving us some indicators, and we present to you guys something that gives you kind of a pathway to go out and look at the market. So I think if you're in a situation where you need to look at Bitcoin and start to take profits, so meaning you're probably under 30K on your average, and you're looking at an opportunity, this might be a spot where you do sell a little bit. Me personally, I've got a little bit that is being sold in the $49K to $50,000 range. And then I'm looking at the potential of this going up. And I still see Bitcoin on a bull run. We do see sentiment very, very strong right now. I just want to jump over to trade the chain real quick just to see where we are. So you can kind of see a little bit of this dip right here that we recorded also, and that is showing up on our sentiment chart, of course, a little bit wider in the sense that we're tracking various social media platforms as opposed to just Twitter. But you do see this little bit of green starting to show up right here, which could be an indicator that we could bump again that 49 to 50K mark. So the point is do you take profits right now? As I said, if you're in fairly low, the likelihood is this might be a good place for you to take some off the table. If you're in a position where you're a little bit more aggressive, the likelihood is you're going to be in a position to have to hold through this and looking for that next all-time high. The likelihood is that I think this is coming, whether it's sometime in September or October, is really where we're looking out to. Again, when we pull these charts, just to kind of give you guys an idea, we'll follow these sentiment and amplification cues along. We'll predict out like what we're doing right here. And we pull out about 7 days, because once you get out 7 days, it gets a little bit mushy unless there's just a really big swath of data coming in that we can take a look at. Again, on sentiment and how amplification. And let me kind of explain this to you, because this is where it's quite a different way than a lot of people that are analyzing the market is when you look at sentiment. Again, like I said, the key here is the node effect, and most of social media and also crypto is built off of the node effect, meaning how people start to move and talk about a particular project, what their intentions are, whether they're going to buy, sell, hold, etc. All that can be determined through social aspects in terms of basically NLP, natural language processing, through sentiment tracking. Pretty simple. I know it sounds complex, it's not. But the key there is that you have such communities built around these individual projects and tokens that you're able to pull back this data, so you can then use the amplification layer to look at predictive analysis. And that's what we've been able to do for many of the projects. Now, there's some projects that absolutely take off, like Axie, a good example of that one that we've talked about before. Very hard to predict because of the ramp up in which we're seeing Axie move. Same kind of scenario. Bitcoin doesn't necessarily fall into that space because we don't see these massive moves, at least not yet. We could see that happen. The key here that I'm always looking for, and I want to go back to the chart, are these things right here. When amplification is holding above sentiment. And that has pretty much been the case almost, well, 3 out of 4 of the last sentiment bubbles that we've scored. It has been holding above, which tells me that amplification is very strong on Bitcoin right now. Sentiment is in. It means the market is in play. And I think that's what we've got to watch, because this $50,000 mark will be a big one to overcome. But when we break it, this is going to be one I think that will be very interesting to take the ride up and definitely start looking for opportunities to start to take profits. And I think that's going to be a key. Now, again, I still hold my position and our prediction of where Bitcoin is going to be by the end of the year. We still do think it's a 6-figure mark around 100K. Could go to 120. We've seen that kind of analysis, and I do think we're going to stretch out the bull run a little bit longer than what a lot of people are anticipating in September and October. I feel like this may end up running through the end of the year, maybe even to Q1, depending on what we're going to see with some things around legislation. And also, because remember, legislation is coming into the session next week. By the way, we've got a big video we're going to drop with Congressman Emmer, who is one of the blockchain task force chairs, the caucus chairs. And we're going to drop that video for you guys. So it's going to be a big one. If we can get it cleared, it's going to be some big information. So make sure and stay tuned right here. Of course, if you guys are listening in over on the podcast right now, best thing you can do is subscribe and give us some kudos over there. If you're here on the YouTube channel, give us some likes if you like what you see. And if you do have some ideas, drop them in the comments below. We love to get your feedback, and the questions that you're giving us is unbelievable. We're using them here on the show, asking CEOs these questions. Make sure and drop those to me. If you want to hit me up direct, do it on Twitter, @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.